Hi there, this is Phil Pendlebury and I've got another walkthrough for you. This time I'm going to show you one of my own tracks. It's a rock track based around a guitar riff and it's called Long Way. And I'm not going to play the track in its entirety until towards the end, but let's just hear the intro and the first chorus. Okay, so that's the basic parts of the song, the intro, the verse, the link, and then the chorus, and it builds up throughout. So you can probably gather that this track was based around a guitar riff. Now normally I'm quite careful with my guitar playing, but I just picked up the guitar and decided to play something a bit rough and didn't intend to actually use it for anything. And that's where the main riff for the song came from. It's in F sharp, and here's how to play the riff. So once that was done, I thought, right, okay, so as usual I like to double up my guitars, so here's the two guitar parts together. So yeah, nice little rocky riff, and just show you the configuration for that, how that was put together. It's the UAD soft tube vintage plugin, and I'm using two, and they're both the same, but one of them has a vibrato on the guitar, which you can probably hear here. And the group has a selection of things. My usual SSL-E, which is the UAD. I've got the precision K stereo, which really adds a nice kind of ambience to the... It does some weird things. In fact, not many people can explain exactly what it does, and neither can I. But it sounds good. And then the Mani reverb from Waves, which is awesome. Just a very small amount. And so you get that with the group of the guitars. There's also a middle guitar, which I added in later. And that's because sometimes when you've just got things panned far left and right, you lose the center when you're listening to it in mono or on certain systems. So I just like to pad it out a little bit. So put them all together and that's what you get. Very simple riff. We've got another little mid guitar here, which I almost forgot about. Yeah, that one doesn't really feature too heavily in the overall mix of the guitars. So yeah, quite nice. There's the old one there, the original demo one, I suppose you could call it, guitar old, which we keep muted. So that was the guitar. Next step was, well, still not decided that I was going to turn this into a song, but I obviously wanted a bass line to go with the guitar. So for the bass, I've just used Omnisphere. It's a P bass picked, heavy rock P bass picked from Omnisphere. Let's have a quick listen to that. And the nice thing with that is, of course, you can probably hear there's some slurred notes which are all to do with velocities. And that's a straight one. So you get that contrast, and it just makes it all sound a little bit more human. And of course, on top of that, there's a little bit of processing going on. We've got the Ocean Way going over just about everything. I'm using that as a send because it's quite a intense plugin. It uses a lot of power, so can't really afford to put it into too many things. Let's find the bass, and it's the Chris Lord bass plugin from Waves, which is just stunning. It's one of those things that seems to add so much realism. You can, do so many things with it. So let's just a quick listen with and without. Obviously the root sound is quite nice anyway, but this one just dirties it up a bit, makes it so that's the bass. It took a little while to get that how I wanted to do it, and in the verses I actually decided to keep the bass on a root note. Just trying to imagine what I would do if I was actually playing my bass, rather than programming it. And obviously along with the bass then next came the drums. So drums. Once again, as you probably know by now, I'm a big fan of Superior 2. I do make all my own presets. And this is a preset I made for the New York Avatar kit. It's a difficult thing to explain in a walkthrough, really, the amount of work that goes into some of the programming of the drums, but let's have a quick listen anyway. Yeah, there's a few little interesting pieces to that little basic groove there. Obviously we've got use of different hi-hats which add to the sort of human feel. Everything's quantized, especially with this kind of track. I do tend to quantize my drums. Some people probably think you shouldn't, and there's nothing wrong with that. But I tend to play them in on the keyboard and then quantize, and I quantize pretty carefully. There will be times fills, obviously, and flams and various other things where you don't want to quantize, but the basic backbeat, yeah, I always do. I find that if you're careful with velocities, it can get away from that computerized feel, help to get away from it if you're more careful with velocities, even if something's quantized. So like the little grace notes, they're actually played. Some of the kits have them, you can play them on one note, but they're actually played. And of course, same goes for the ones at the end. And if we skip forward a little bit, you'll see in the link, I think there's some nice bits of drum in here. Okay, so you can clearly see that some of this is quantized, some of it isn't. The little tom fill there at the end isn't. There's a little grace note there, and then some more. Put them all together, So a little bit of care, and what I tend to do is have a basic beat like I did at the beginning and then go through the track afterwards and you know, put in some extra fills and so on and so forth. So let's hear the guitar and the drums and bass. So there's the basic sort of backbeat, the meat and potatoes of the track. So moving on, little embellishments. So we get to, because it's a rock track, I thought, right, it's got to have a Hammond of some kind in it. So we went for this. And that is the vintage organs from Contact. Again, it's my own patch. A little bit of messing around to get it distorted and playing around. Totally quantized apart from the little fall-offs at the end, which you then kind of select and unquantize. Quite easily done. So that was the organ. And again, if you want to just quickly hear that, you'll see how it sort of slots into the groove. Another thing I like to do is try and put something in that makes things a little bit quirky, a little bit different from, you know, just a bog standard bunch of rock sounds. Now hopefully you've already done that with your own style and your own playing, but I like to try and just put a little thing in. So I found this sound, it's another Hammond, another organ sound, but and it's just a little cheeky little piece of cheese, as I've called it, that sort of broke out the middle of the choruses. So if you mute off the vocals, let's have a listen. Yeah, so that was sort of pretty much it with the music. I kind of came to the conclusion that if I don't do some singing soon, then the track is going to end up being not a track, and it's just going to end up being an instrumental, as often happens. So got the mic out and spent a couple of hours just scribbling down some words. As usual, probably should have spent a lot longer. And the vocals for this were very rough, but there's some interesting little tips to come in the BV parts. So we'll get through this as quickly as possible. So the lead vocal, here we are. Let's just solo off the vocals in general. So lead vocal is 2 tracks and goes like this.
Beaten up and taken down, you got to turn your life around. Heading out or staying in, you have to lose before you win.
Looking at both of those, you can see they're just one take, and there's no tuning involved there. And I'm not trying to brag about that. In this particular, I'm pretty good with my pitch. In this particular case, I decided to do absolutely 0 with the Vari audio, but there is Vari audio coming up in the backing vocals, which we'll get to in a minute. So just in case anyone's interested about how that vocal sound was made, well, there's two tracks, obviously, but then I have quite a little bit of processing going on here. So let's hear it again.
Beaten up and taken down, you got to turn your life around. Heading out or staying in, you have to lose before you win.
So I've got my Cubase 7 mixer up here, and you can see this is the group with all the vocals. So I've got a little bit of a de-esser going on. I've got my usual 4K channel strip, which is just a bit of compression and some EQ. The main one here is the Cooper Time Cube. This is UAD, and this is what's adding that sort of slapback delay. So let's hear it without that, and then I'll slot it in again.
Beaten up and taken down, you got to turn your life around. Heading out or staying in. You have to lose before you win.
And of course, it sounds very messy, lots of breaths and struggles and all sorts of things going on. A very, very tiny 3.5 look there on of a quarter delay with an average feedback, and that's the vocals. And at the end of the vocals, they're all going up. The All-Vox group here, which has the Fairchild, the Waves, or Puke Child, Jack Joseph. So okay, and the link.
When you've forgotten all you know, yeah you did. When there's nothing left to show, you gotta listen now.
So that's the link, exactly the same. And we're into the chorus. We slow down instead of being more rhythmical.
It's been a long way. It's finally coming back to you. Yeah. You had a bad day, but you know you're gonna make it through.
As you can hear there, when it's on its own, very, very rough. But I've also got support from a couple of backing vocal lines.
Long way.
And from another little part of the backing vocals down here.
Long way.
And when you hear them all together,
You gotta listen now. It's been a long way. It's finally coming back to you.
alright, so let's get on to the vocal embellishments, the BV block. So this is the BVs all together.
Long way.
And they go along with the little riff that I showed you earlier, which is the cheese. Let's have a quick listen to that together.
Long way.
So, big blocks of vocals like these aren't the best example, but they're not a bad example. And I like to just build them up, and I'm never afraid to use a little bit of Vari audio on these. So let's hear the individual parts. I think I started off here with one that's
Long way.
those are just the lead vocal line. And then we have,
Long way.
and as you can imagine, singing down low like that, especially when you're in a hurry, very difficult. So you can hear that they've been clearly tuned. Right, so put those two together though.
Long way. Long way. Long way. Long way.
There's the key ones really, are the ones where you have to go for it a little bit, and they're not tuned, but the higher ones start to get tuned.
Long way.
In fact, they're not tuned either, but I think these were.
Long way.
Put them all together.
Long way.
Now, if you listen to these top ones on their own, they'll make you laugh. Yeah, the Monty Pythons, as we call them. Falsetto has never been my strong point, but a little bit of tuning, as I say, and put them all together, and you get quite a powerful result. The mixer channel for that, it's just a little bit of delay, and again, an overall compression on the BVs, and they're kept separate from the main outputs, you know, so that they don't get squashed down by the lead vocal, so they still have their own power. Okay, so we're nearly there. There's two other things. One is the vocal ad-libs.
Been a long, long way. You had a bad, bad day. You're gonna make it through. You're gonna make it through. Hit me.
Alright, so let's put them all together, and you'll get an idea of all the vocals as an ensemble.
You gotta listen now. It's been a long way. It's finally coming back to you. Been a long, long way. Yes, it is. You had a bad, bad day. You had a bad day. You know know you're gonna make it through. You know you're always gonna make it through.
Alright, so that's the vocals. Not the best performance, but when it's all in the track, sounds fine to me. So finally, as it's my own track, I'm allowed to put a solo on. And again, the solo, nothing dramatic, a few little ideas to bring it in. Probably should have spent more time. Okay, so here's the solo. Yep, so that's the soft tube, the UAD soft tube. I use Guitar Rig a lot of the time, Native Instruments Guitar Rig, but for this particular track I liked the sound of the UAD soft tube. There's not a huge amount of processing going on there, it's basically just the Variacs. I think it's in Telecaster mode, and put it all together and this is what you get. You probably noticed there by accident that I did a little brass part which decided not to use. A couple of my friends said nah, leave it out and let it be raw, and there's the brass just out of interest. Sounds a bit twee, but actually within the track it didn't sound too bad. That's again, it's from Contact, it's Native Instruments session horns. So there you go, you can see towards the end everything's starting to get a little bit more urgent, the tambourines build up. And as I was mentioning earlier, what I tend to do is go through, you know, make some more interesting fills. In this case, this particular part, I followed the vocal and then I adjusted the bass and the drums to follow the vocal. Sort of gives the impression that the band have been playing together a little while and they all know what each other are doing. Okay, so that's it, long way. Hope you found this one interesting. I'll leave you a link to the fully mastered version, which does sound considerably different. Meanwhile, let's just have a listen to the end of the track and I'll see you next time. Thanks for listening and see you soon.